I'm Dr. Connie. I'm your host of Mind Your Health podcast. I share my unique perspective both as a practitioner and a patient battling autoimmune condition for over 25 years because I had to figure things out on my own, and my education and my practical approach as a patient allows me to truly integrate it so that you can be whole and the burden of sick care is no longer your own burden to carry. And this is what we help you with in this podcast. Hi. Today we're going to be talking about hormonal imbalance cascade and how it contributes to your symptoms. So hormonal imbalance can trigger a biochemical cascade within you in the body to throw your body off balance that can lead to various symptoms that you may be experiencing right now. Okay. In last week's episode, I talked a lot about stress and how that can influence all the hormones in the body, especially the number one stress hormone being cortisol. And that's what starts the cascade. And the cascade is some trigger happens and there's a host of effects, like a domino effect. And today we'll go into a deeper hormonal impact on the body, learning a little bit more in depth about different aspects of the hormones, what they do, so that you can better understand. The more you can understand about this miraculous body of yours in the context of your own health and your symptoms, I believe that sets you up to really learn the important life skills that I call EASE method, learning all about how to eat, how to regulate your nervous system and manage your stress, how to move your body efficiently and effectively without injury, as well as to really, really have this empowered sense of empowered psychology through emotional and mental regulation. Okay. Hormonal balance is crucial for maintaining overall health and well-being for sure. And that hormonal balance doesn't just happen by itself. It really is very sensitive through the gut microbiome, as well as your gut barrier. It can be influenced as well as to influence all the aspects of your body because it's chemical messengers in the body. Super important. The body's endocrine system is a network of glands, different glands that control different things that produce and release different hormones, which are chemical messengers, like I said, that communicate and regulate various body functions in the body. Hormones communicate with all the other hormones and organs in the body, so it doesn't operate by itself. It's all integrated, and that's why I would need you guys to start to really get the aspect of holistic. Never just thinking one hormone, but it's holistic. Because if you really look at the effects of different hormones and imbalances, some of them overlap a lot, you guys, okay, for that reason. So it's not one that can be easily isolated and treated as it affects the whole cascade of hormones. And unfortunately, conventional medicine tries to isolate different hormones and supply the deficient ones, not really looking at what's causing the deficiency, okay? Hormones are replaced if it's not sufficient in conventional medicine. And if you have hypothyroidism, you can go in, you get a little bit of TSH check, and then maybe T3, T4, and then the doctor might place you on thyroid. And unfortunate thing about this is that a lot of people have thyroid hormone issues, but thyroid hormone in and of itself doesn't operate. It can be due to the HPA axis, which I'll go into and explain a little bit more about the complexities of your hormone cycles and how it works together. And if you go to the doctors and you complain and you're middle-aged, about to be menopause or menopause already, and you have hot flashes, you're going to be placed on hormone replacement therapy to replace estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, okay? Then they check you every 3 months or leave you on it until it doesn't work anymore. And then it can be years before you get it checked again. Come to find out by that time, because you've been taking external source of thyroid or HRT, your ovary or thyroid might not be working as effectively. And that's something you have consequences about, right? And as you can see, practically speaking, since all the hormones work in harmony and main goal is to balance the hormones, it makes more sense to address the root cause that is throwing hormones out of the whack instead of replacing the deficient hormones. It can cause hypothyroidism and menopause symptoms, for example. More than replacing the hormones to eliminate the symptoms, it would make more sense to address the cortisol level. That is the number one stress hormone that affects all hormones, including the thyroid, as well as the sex hormones due to menopause. I see this play out a lot. It's never just one thing. It's usually the cortisol, stress. Because a lot of what happens is when you go through menopause, if you really look at the life cycles, there's a lot of empty nesting. And then when you empty nest, you have to look at your spouse again and you realize there's no relationship to be had because for so long you focused all your energy on the kids, so much so you don't know your spouse anymore. And there's a lot of stress. A lot of people get divorced at that age. And a lot of people have midlife crisis. There's just a lot of things happening. And so that's the root cause, not the hormone issue. And hormone imbalance happened because of this, throwing cortisol skyrocketed, and then cortisol fatigues, and then that depletes all the sex hormones because it influences one another. So I want to give you an overview of all the hormones in the body, and I'm going to start with the adrenals because I feel like that's like the number one hormone that's kind of starts the biochemical cascade that I talked about at the beginning. Okay, number one hormone is cortisol that I'm going to start with by the adrenal glands. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone because it helps the body, helps to stress or helps to respond to stress. It also regulates metabolism, blood sugar, as well as inflammation. There's also adrenaline and noradrenaline, and these hormones are responsible for that fight or flight response where you've got to just run for your life. And you know, back in the days when we used to run from saber-toothed tigers in our Paleolithic age, they used to run and then the tiger would kaput out. They were safe, back to safety or into a cave. And then that rush, the cortisol rush, comes back to baseline. Well, these days in our modern world, everything that dings, everything that pings, everything that you check becomes a fight or flight rush without even knowing the effects of it. And so we already live in a very stressful world. And so a lot of people are stuck at fight or flight without even knowing. The dysfunction in the adrenal gland starts in what's called the HPA axis, which is hypothalamic, which is part of your brain, adrenal, which is your adrenal gland, and pituitary gland. It's the master gland that orchestrates all the organs, okay? And it really gets a signal, your brain gets a signal of stress, and you have a fight with your spouse, you might have had financial strain, you are taking care of your sick mom, you're stuck in traffic, you got laid off, or you just got divorced, or you're just getting sick and you have to contend with all these symptoms that you have. And typically when you have stress, there's surge and rise in the adrenal hormones, like I said, and then you're back to baseline. But these days, we stay hyper stressed all the time without even knowing, and our body just doesn't know how to keep up with that. And so the term adrenal fatigue comes from that because cortisol gets high and then it keeps getting pushed up and then it never backs down. So your adrenals fatigue out and it stops producing cortisol, and that's why people just become so tired, foggy brain, all the things, okay? I want you to know that sex hormones work closely with the adrenals to affect the organs and the body functions through the HPA axis. Sex hormones that include estrogen, which is involved in reproductive health, menstrual cycle regulation, and maintaining bone density in women. Progesterone is the hormone that supports pregnancy and menstrual cycle regulation. Testosterone is essential for muscle mass, bone density, and sperm production in men. And women also produce some testosterone. And in menopausal age, it often is part of the HRT because we decrease sex hormone production. And typical sex hormone imbalances are fatigue, weight gain, foggy brain, low libido, hot flashes, overall body aches and pains, increased appetite, which are also symptoms of adrenal fatigue, okay? And then you'll see these symptoms are similar to hypothyroidism as well. And really, please listen to everything that I'm saying instead of assuming, oh, I have hormonal imbalance, so I better go to my OB-GYN and get some HRT because they will gladly prescribe you that. But oftentimes that's not the bigger story. And unfortunately, our conventional doctors they do discuss issues interdisciplinarily, but they don't go into details of really getting to know you as the person to follow the root cause, like I'm doing here, is why it's essential for you to be self-advocating. Remember that adrenals when they are taxed, there's a biochemical phenomenon that shifts the metabolic pathway to decrease the sex hormone production altogether, and that's why it decreases. And when typical sex hormone imbalances, like I told you, these symptoms, they progress, and conventionally patients get prescribed that HRT depending on their needs. But now you see the interconnectedness. To replace the isolated hormone in the overall hormonal cascade only is part of the puzzle. So really rethink starting something like that in lieu of, because at the end of the day, I believe menopause really isn't a disease. It's part of life, okay? Second thing I want to talk to you about is metabolic hormones. Metabolism in a nutshell is your body's ability to transform food into energy so you can expend it, so you can move. You have things. Even if you don't move, for your body to just function, it takes calories, okay? Insulin from pancreas is a key player in metabolic process because insulin helps the cells to take up glucose into the cells to use for energy, okay? And elevated cortisol levels from chronic stress desensitizes the cellular membrane receptor sites to create insulin resistance, which then leads to obesity and diabetes. And insulin resistance is really when cells are not receptive to take the glucose from the bloodstream, so you have sweet blood. And hyperglycemia is when insulin is not effective, glucose cannot enter the cells efficiently and remains in the bloodstream, okay? Leading to high blood pressure levels or high blood sugar levels, and persistent hyperglycemia can damage blood vessels, nerves, leading to complications such as heart disease, kidney damage, vision problems, neuropathy, among other symptoms. And this can also lead to what's called PCOS, insulin resistance, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and weight gain. PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, for those of you who don't know. And people who struggle with PCOS has insulin resistance, which leads to weight gain, which again links to adrenal, sex hormones, and metabolic dysfunction all together in one category. So again, rethink, because a person like that, if we give them a dose of sex hormones, HRT, it's like adding fuel to the fire. And so I don't like to see that, okay? The second thing is immune chemicals, okay? Thymosin is produced by the thymus gland, which plays a crucial role in the development and function of the immune system. So it's really important in the younger years, but mature adults, the thymus gland is not as active, even though it's still there. The thymus gland and its hormones, thymosins, are essential for proper functioning of the immune system, especially in developing strong and diverse population of T cells, which are first line of defense in our body, capable of protecting the body against a wide range of infectious disease and agents, okay? Thymosin is the hormone that's responsible for initiation of that inflammation, and all the aforementioned leads to chronic inflammation over time if it's not addressed in time. Symptoms of chronic inflammation are foggy brain, weight gain, metabolic issues, fatigue, insomnia, weakness, aches and pains, and more, okay? Again, similar to the hormonal imbalance, right? It's a general statement that gets thrown around, so be careful to get trapped by these diagnoses. Chronic inflammation also, if not addressed, can lead to autoimmune conditions like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and more. Next is thyroid. The thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland in the neck that produces hormones regulating metabolism, energy levels, and overall body functions. Thyroid hormones, we need to explain this, right? Thyroxine, T4, and triiodothyronine, which is T3, is produced by the thyroid gland, and these hormones regulate metabolism, energy production, and body temperature. Super important. Common thyroid dysfunction is hypothyroidism, which is when the thyroid is not producing enough thyroid hormones. And there's, on the flip side, there's hyperthyroidism, where it's producing too much. So when you have hyperthyroidism, you lose a lot of weight, but you're just like really on fire. And then when you're hypo, there's a little bit of a sluggish, gaining weight, dry skin, and all the things. Common causes of hypothyroidism include Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition where the immune system attacks the thyroid, and Graves' disease, which is an overactive thyroid condition causing hyperthyroidism due to inflammation affecting overproduction of thyroid hormones. When most people experience symptoms of thyroid dysfunction, taking the replacement is not a long-term solution. Short-term, okay. Long-term, you have to have a plan B, okay? Unless you address the root cause, it'll only scratch the surface. Not only that, when you take external forms, you're essentially telling your own thyroid, you don't have to work, just relax and go surf. Go relax on the beach, right? So it becomes sluggish. External regulation of any hormone. In this case, thyroid will receive feedback to hibernate, and it's getting enough from another source, so it'll be told to go to sleep. And it takes a while for it to wake up, if it wakes up at all. I've had patients who's been on Synthroid for over 30 years since they were pregnant with their first child. But you now know HPA axis, so it's all connected. And pituitary gland is the master gland of all glands controlling all organs in the body. And pituitary stimulates the adrenals to release cortisol to trigger all the cascades. So everything just doesn't work by itself, leading to pituitary hormones that I talked about. It really is responsible for a host of stimulating hormones. So it's basically sending all the messages to respective organs to produce its respective hormones that it produces. For example, thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, put out by the pituitary, is the only thyroid lab testing they used to do conventionally, probably about a decade ago. Today, it's becoming much more common and prevalent to check for the T3, T4, and different elements of that to be more detailed, because there's so many people knowledgeable about functional medicine. But prior to that, that's all that they did. And based on that, they'll be put on hypothyroid or Synthroid. Pituitary gland also produces growth hormones, which regulates growth and metabolism. It also produces luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, regulating reproductive process for your ovaries. And then it also produces adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, which stimulates cortisol production in the adrenal glands. And then, of course, I mentioned TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which regulates production of thyroid hormones. Remember, all pituitary hormones influence all other hormones that we discussed in this episode, and is a continuous feedback mechanism of producing more or less. And so the more you invite outside in, then the less your hormones have to work, which is not a good thing, okay? Lastly, it's pineal hormone. Pineal gland, it's a small pine cone-shaped endocrine gland located in the brain near the center of the head, and playing a key role in the body's internal clock and regulation of circadian rhythm. It produces, the main hormone is melatonin. Produced by the pineal gland, melatonin regulates that sleep-wake cycle. And when you're not producing enough melatonin, you won't be able to get quality sleep. And when you're not able to sleep, you'll have chronic fatigue, and you'll affect the whole cortisol stimulation, the whole cascade starts again. So I'm just going to give you a hormonal cascade or hormonal imbalance cascade recap. So number one thing to consider is stress. Chronic stress can lead to elevated cortisol levels, disrupting the balance of other hormones such as insulin, sex hormones, and thyroid hormones. Adrenal fatigue is prolonged stress can lead to adrenal fatigue, where the adrenal glands struggle to put out more cortisol, further impacting hormonal imbalance. And then sex hormone imbalance is elevated cortisol can suppress the production of sex hormones, is why you lack the production of sex hormone. And then there's insulin resistance, where chronic stress and hormonal imbalance can contribute to insulin resistance, which is cellular receptivity is altered or decreased as a result of diabetes and weight gain, or leads to diabetes and weight gain. And then there's inflammation. Chronic stress triggers low-grade inflammation that can wreak havoc on the other balances or imbalances, adding another complex layer to the system. And then poor gut health, it's everything. It's the first line of defense. Hormonal imbalances can affect gut health, leading to inflammation, dysbiosis, and leaky gut syndrome. And then stress affects the gut primarily, so that can affect the ability for all the aforementioned hormones to be produced in the proper way or in the proper amounts. Symptoms. The cascade of hormonal imbalances can manifest as various symptoms, including fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, sleep disturbances, and digestive issues as well. So all this said, I want you to really understand the importance of all hormones working together, that it's a cascade. It doesn't just work one. You have to balance all of it together. And so at this time, I think it's an opportune time for me to invite you. I'm so excited to host a webinar all about teaching you how to learn the life's essential skills that you never learned, how to eat, how to regulate your nervous system, how to move effectively and efficiently without injury, as well as to really understand mental and emotional regulation so that you can optimize your health, not just temporarily, but for life, and know exactly what to do. In fact, when you do advocate or go to the doctors, you can advocate yourself in the manner with a lot of knowledge and conviction about what you want to do with your body, knowing fully well what it's capable of. Okay, so I want to invite you to this upcoming webinar, where we'll dive deeper into this hormonal imbalance. I'm going to tie all the dots for you, give you the 4 essential life skill that I'm talking about that should be fundamental, that you and I never learned in our lifetime, that we get to learn now to affect our future and the lives of our children as well. So I want to invite you. The link is below. Come join me there. I'm super excited. I've got so much packed information that you can walk away with so confident to live your life. Not only that, you'll have all the tools to live the healthiest life and be the best version of yourself for life. Never, ever think about any of these really stumping you in any way, shape, or form. I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a review. We love it. And subscribe. Follow us for more and leave me comments. We read every single one of those comments. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys all next week. Thank you for listening to the Mind Your Health podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we would so much love it and appreciate it if you share it with someone who could benefit as well as to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else where podcasts are found. And leave us a review. We would be so grateful, and it helps us to reach more people just like you, so you can become more empowered to enjoy longevity and health. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Dr. Connie Chung. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast for a new episode every single week.